It's WDHA's Reconnect with Rockers. I am super excited to reconnect with a couple guys I haven't seen in a couple of years, Jake Kiszka and Danny Wagner from Greta Van Fleet. Hi, guys. It's great to see your beautiful faces.
Oh,
Hello.
it's so nice that we can actually do this.
Yay!
Yeah.
So, gosh, I don't even know where to start because it's like, what a journey that you are on and you are still on. The Battle at Garden's Gate, I've described it on the air as big, because that's probably the easiest adjective to describe it. Visual, dynamic, storytelling, kind of an epic journey. I think the epic journey of the record almost kind of follows your sort of epic journey over the last couple of years as a band. So talk to me about crafting these songs that are so visual in nature and is such a part of who you guys have been, have become, and are becoming.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting couple of years. And I think, initially, this is, I suppose, always been a record that we've wanted to make. And I think if we'd have done, I don't think that we could have done this, previously. And I think it's taken us on a journey to be able to get to this point, to be able to record something like this. And whether it be, people, places, things, ideas, concepts, things that we've sort of encountered on the road over the last couple of years, or just our, proficiency as studio musicians. And I think that all encompassing this, the Battle at Garden's Gate sort of, I think, tells a story of sort of where we've come from and who we are now. And I think people can also get a sense of where we are going.
And what I love about the journey is, you guys started out, Detroit is a very special place, I think, for music.
Yeah.
I think there is how do I say this? A uniqueness of artistry there. Whether, you kind of go back to the Berry Gordy days, or I just had actually Susie Quattro on this feature, who I grew up loving and listening to. She's a Detroit lady, and we talked about that a little bit. And then the journey takes you sort of like, Nashville, LA, back to kind of the roots a little bit. So talk to me about, what geographic location and sort of traveling sort of throughout the country has done for your artistry on this record.
Yeah, like you said, grew up in Detroit, and for a while that was really all we were exposed to as musicians, and that's it's a great start, because like you said, there's so much awesome history there. And then you travel to Nashville, and we're very much people who kind of reflect, in different ways and location and where you're at. And I think one of the first major trips we took out as a band was out to the West Coast and Temecula, California,
Right.
and we did a little film/music festival out there. And it was kind of the first time we had traveled, and you immediately get hit with that feeling of, this is kind of what touring is like. You get to experience the world in so many different environments and different ways, and the different cultures of people. And that's something that we always take with us wherever we go. And then you go overseas, and it's even cooler. It's even, it's more diverse and different. But at the end of the day, the fans and the energy in the room, it's always the same. And that's one of the highest honors we have as a group, is to be able to travel the world and experience the appreciation of what we're doing in rock and roll.
Well, I want to talk about the fan base, because I have a couple of props here that I'm going to, before we exit. But I want to talk about some tunes on the record. The fan favorites, the things that people have been talking to me about. First of all, The Heat Above kind of starts the journey. That's a tune that you guys had for a while, correct? That wasn't like a spanking brand new song for this. So why was that the first song on this record? Why was that sort of the introduction for people to this record?
I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons. I mean, I think sonically, something that opens up, sort of envelops the way that it does, with the keys kind of bringing light to, the first light to the album. I think that kind of encompasses what we want to try to achieve with the first song, but as well as, I think this song kind of goes back maybe the furthest, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, this particular song was sort of put together initially, and then it sat on a shelf collecting dust until we recently pulled it off, and sort of reconfigured it. So those are two main reasons, but I think it's also kind of an anthem for the fans in a way. I think that song very much became a sort of representation of our appreciation and love for those who appreciate and love our music and our craft. And I think that is probably another main reason why that song was selected to sort of open the record.
Did pandemic time sort of help you guys also sort of take a little extra breathing time, a little extra room, maybe travel, a couple of different paths that you didn't think that you were going to travel, as opposed to like, got to write this record on the road? I would have imagined you guys would have been doing a ton of touring in 2020. Got to write this record on the road, got to get into the studio quickly, got to bang out another record, got to jump back on tour. It's festival season, blah, blah, blah. I'm hearing from artists that this year for them, turning sort of obstacle into opportunity gave people some wiggle room to be able to say, you know what, we didn't think maybe we would have gone in this direction. And then the other thing I want, it's kind of a two-part question. So you got 4 guys here. How do 4 guys decide to sort of go in a different direction and everybody's sort of on the same page to take that turn together? Because you did take some chances on this record.
Yeah. The pandemic really, we had not lived domestically in a long time.
Domestically, I love that.
Yeah, it's just like tour, and I feel like that's kind of what it did to everyone, and it's a bit of a shock. Touring is chaos, and honestly, starting this album in the midst of touring and writing a lot of the songs in the midst of recording and touring, it's kind of a beautiful thing. That chaos is something that we definitely thrive off of, and we've gotten so accustomed to that over the years that when you're told that you have to stay, in one area and distance yourself from people, it was a bit of a shock at first, but it did offer that time to sort of reflect on what had happened over the few years of touring and even, before that, and where you would like to go as an artist. This album, kind of what Jake was saying earlier, when we started writing and recording these songs, they just kind of turned out the way they were. And Greg Kurstin definitely played a part into this. When we first initially met him, we kind of talked about these ideas of theatrics and cinema incorporating into our music, and he loved the idea. So naturally it kind of started developing that way. And it's also just a product of who we are as musicians. It's a staple in time for us, like all albums.
And what was it like to work with him? He's a crafter. He's like a craftsman of songs and sound, and, worked with everybody from, Foos to Adele to, I love the diversity of what he's done. And how did you decide to go with him? I mean, a producer is such an important part. They're a band member. They're, in the minds and hearts and playing of the band. So why was he the right choice? And it seemed like it was a really pleasant experience for you guys working with him, because I think you can kind of hear that, even though there are some sort of dark and somber tones on the record, it's kind of a dark and light experience when you're going through it. So why was he the right choice? And how does Greta Van Fleet decide who is going to produce their record? It's a unique task.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that we met with a few different producers prior to coming to terms with the fact that Greg may have been the best, was the best selection for the record. But it was interesting because when we sat down with Greg, I think he was probably the most elated by the idea of doing something very cinematic and rock and roll, and his eyes just sort of lit up. And I think at that moment we kind of knew that this wasn't just a project that someone was interested in doing. This is like a dream project of Greg's and ours, and we sort of shared a vision at that point. And I think that was inspiring to us, and it was a really interesting journey, sort of just crafting the album throughout together, because like Danny has said in the past, Greg is like a musical encyclopedia. There's absolutely nothing that he can't tap into that he doesn't already previously know. It's like, how do we get this tone? How do we get this sounding this way? And how can we approach this way? And he's like, and he goes into his index and he goes, oh, we could do this, this, and this, and then that's how that can be achieved. And it's like, so that was like, I don't know, like alchemy sort of to watch something like that play out.
Yeah, sure.
At the same time, it was his problem solving skills. I mean, we never really hit a wall where there was, there wasn't any writer's block. There was the train never stopped moving. I think it was like, if we came to some sort of point, Greg would just go, okay, well, what if we tried this, this, and this? And we kept moving forward. And it was the same thing with the problem solving aspects. If we had 3 different bridges or 3 different pre-courses or whatever, we couldn't decide, I'm going to stand my ground here, and Danny's going to stand his ground there, and Josh can stand his ground there, and Sam's going to stand his ground here. So what do we do? Well, we went to Greg and we said, we have these 3 parts. Which one do you think's best? And he's like, well, they're all great. They're all really good parts, but this one works the most musically. This one achieves this emotion, and this one achieves this. It's like, so what do you guys want to try to achieve? What's the goal? Okay, you want to do something, in this vein. Well, this would be the direction to go, and then boom, we're on to the next thing. So
yeah, that's a perfect 5th band member. That's a perfect 5th band member.
And his wisdom too. He's had so much experience that all came with it, and it was a really magical process to work with Greg Kurstin.
Yeah, he was probably juiced to work with you guys too, young band. I mean,
He'll be a friend.
Yeah. And that trust level obviously there. And these songs are these are such big songs. They're custom made. Here's what I picture though. Like they're custom made for live performance, but I picture them they're big, dare I say it, big arena songs. These are big, arena kind of songs. I think there's some wiggle room for big arena performances, jamming out, on some of these tunes. So when touring does resume, how do you guys visualize, what a Greta Van Fleet tour is going to be like now?
Like you said, a lot of these songs deserve to live on stage, and a few of them actually came from the stage, which is kind of like The Weight of Dreams, ironically, actually used to be a different sort of song, and it came.
That's the song I was thinking of actually when I was asking that question. I just picture that as such a big epic jam,
And the birth of that one was so organic and natural, and it kind of started out as this little interlude years back, and it really just took on its own life at some point by itself. So I really hope that once touring resumes, that we had plans going into 2020 and 2021, and we were talking about larger stage, larger production, because we were going into larger venues. We were scheduled to play with Metallica and arenas, and we were kind of geared up, coinciding with the creation of this album to kind of expand our live performance a little bit. But that didn't happen. So we're hoping that, with all this tension and, we're right on this fault line, that as soon as it goes back into commission, that we are going to explode once we get back out on tour.
Yeah. And I felt like it was such a weird vibe when you guys were on Colbert and Kimmel, because they were great performances and they were big, on these big stages, this big sound stage. What was it like for you guys to be doing that and not have that give back, from the fans, but still put on this fantastic performance of these big epic songs?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple interesting points to make there as well. I mean, the live performance and what you're giving the audience, what they're giving you, it's complete human experience. It's complete indulgence in life and all things that it means to, be more, bound by mortality in a way. It's unbelievable. So with this album in particular, especially sort of trying to play live to no audience, and the fact that we still haven't played pretty much 90% of the album, 95% of the album to people ever, that maybe The Weight of Dreams is descendant of something called the Black Flag Exposition, which was a live piece that we still, that it still lives in its release now. And it feels like, okay, it's in the world and it exists, and people can consume this and be a part of it. But it still doesn't live in the sense that we have gone out and we've played live. We haven't toured on it. We haven't exhausted its possibilities live yet. And so there's still this aspect of this album that feels like it consciously doesn't exist quite yet. But I think that that's a really interesting thing to be able to go out and actually play it for people and see the response physically. But to do Colbert and to do Kimmel, it was a bit strange not having people, you know, out there, especially with this type of material. It's like, you know, you end with you end with the Weight of Dreams, and then, you know, there's a cricket in the back of the studio room. You know? It's like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. You're picturing those fans. Well, Weight of Dreams is too, for those who, I know there's like zero Greta fans watching this right now that don't have the record, but that sort of ends, you know, it's a perfect end for, as I've called the record, you know, kind of the journey, because you are sort of on the, you know, on the journey in its 8-minute epicness. You know, it's a perfect, you know, kind of hat on the record. How was sequencing this record for you guys? Because I would imagine that's a pretty important part of a process of a record like this, and figuring out what goes where, and, you know, how to take the fans, you know, sort of down that path.
When we started that conversation, it was actually a little more difficult than we had thought, because we kind of sat back and you have to, of course, listen to all the songs, and it's such a big, dense album that it almost feels like, you know, you could make a mistake when you're sequencing it poorly. And, you know, it's not very often that every single song on the record is so different from one another. And that played into it greatly as well. So I think we kind of started with Heat Above, we knew was going to kick off the album. And then I think immediately after, in conversation, we kind of talked about Weight of Dreams going to end the album. So how do we fill that in? And it's interesting, the way we ended up sequencing it was just kind of trial and error with, you know, and formulating different chapters in the album. And we knew that, of course, on vinyl, it was going to be divided into 4 parts, because it's a massive album and it can't fit on one individual vinyl. So it's kind of interesting in that sense that, you know, you have 3, 3, 3, and 3, and they all kind of make up chapters of the album. And we thought, you know, at the very end, that it would be kind of cool to break up the songs in their respect that way.
And, you know, the fans, I'm a person of the fans. I love to see what the fans are saying and doing with bands, you know, and I love seeing how fan bases react. And I've got to say, you guys have that fan base that is, you know, every band's dream to kind of have a fan base. Like, you know, the Peaceful Army, I saw there was parties in Frankenmuth going on this weekend, album release parties, people were going there, people were celebrating you guys. I have, because we play Greta Van Fleet, you know, I've had people give me things. I remember when you guys played at Starland Ballroom and we did something with you. And I had a fan who, every person who won tickets on my radio station, this man made shirts and he commemorated the event that way. I have somebody who sends me Greta Van Fleet sunglasses every summer. I have now 3 summers worth of Greta Van Fleet sunglasses. I have a gentleman who sends me, I have Greta Van Fleet socks, because we play a lot of Greta Van Fleet on the station. So the fan base is, you know, is crazy. And I mean that in the best possible way. They love you guys. You mean, I mean, I think, Jake, I saw somebody on social media say it was a picture of you. And I think that there was some sort of quote where this person said, you know, in 4 days, you know, when the record comes out, you know, this man is going to show the world a different style of playing. And like, I mean, they're so in the zone with what you guys do. It is here, it is everywhere for them. How can you sort of explain, if you can, the Greta fan base, and why do you think they just feel everything you do as a band?
It's really interesting. And again, like you said, it's a really rare circumstance to have a fan base that is this connected to what we're doing, and this sort of based in our reality, in their own, is they're pretty much living in you know, our worlds as we're living in theirs. It's really, we're kind of all one. But there's a lot to say about that, because not only are they incredible fans and ones that truly get what we're doing, but they're also people who are sort of emanate sort of what we're about as a group in general, why we write our music. Right? You know, there's this sense of peace, love, and unity amongst that whole group, and that sort of guild of people that continues to see, you know, to grow in an interesting way. But I think the way that they express what they feel, or what, you know, or what they're doing based on the music that we've created, or, you know, is that the fact that they're sort of the ground team, they're kind of ground zero, that they see and they feel everything in the crack of every street corner. And like, you know, when we move to city and we play town to town, they're sort of on ground zero. And it's really interesting, everything that they sort of, because we pay attention to a lot of things that they do as well. We're pretty involved with our fan base. But, you know, it's like, I think as much as we're sort of a family, a band of brothers, it's that sort of same philosophy that a lot of these people take away as well, is that they've sort of become a part of this family, that, you know, we as a global society sort of are drawn together by character, by proximity, that you know, everybody sort of feels as if we're all kin in a certain way. And I think the fan base really sort of reflect that in a lot of ways.
And it's really special that, like, right at the very get-go of everything, you know, but playing back in Michigan, the fan base ranged from all ages. And that was the coolest thing. You know, as soon as we got out of the bars and it was people that were allowed in younger than 18 or 21 at times, you know, you start to notice that it was almost entire families at times. You know,
I did a Q&A session with you guys at Starland Ballroom. We had people in the Q&A that were 17 and people in the Q&A that were 68. I mean, and they were all huge fans. Nobody like took a friend or took a kid, or it wasn't like that. They were all giant Greta fans. The music, I have listeners that said, you know, the music of the band makes me feel like I'm a teenager again, discovering rock and roll for the first time. That is a blessing. I mean, that's a blessing, man, to have a fan say that, an older fan say that about your music, you know, to give them that incredible feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting time for rock and roll too. There's a sort of a bridge that's sort of gapping all of these multi-generationals, that, you know, you've had like the evolution of not only this genre specific rock and roll over the last 7 decades. You know, it's like there's people that have, you know, lived in a world where there was always rock and roll, and then, you know, it's like those, or around where there's the sort of birth of the British invasion, or the birth of different forms of rock and roll, and these multi generations, including our own, who are very new to this genre specifically, are now all sort of meeting, and they're all sort of coming together collectively. And it seems like we're in the right place and right time, and play the music that's sort of making that possible, along with so many other rock and roll bands. But now when you go to one of our shows, again, it's like you have 8 to 80, but then again, that's never really happened historically before.
And I love it. They're all willing to jump on a plane or plant a tree, or, you know, I'll see people like going to the UK for a Greta show, and I'm just like, wow, like that's a fan base, man. That's a fan base. So kudos to you guys, and congratulations, you know, on a great new record, The Battle at Gardens Gate. We've been waiting for it. We have it. It certainly didn't disappoint. I see, you know, everybody's got fan favorites. Broken Bells is one that I'm seeing people just be like, oh my God, I've listened to this song 15 times today, you know, or Age of Machine. I mean, there's just so much to get into on this record. And it's awesome to see you guys, and congratulations on everything. We can't wait to see you back out on the road doing those big songs in big places.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I'm waiting for that day, man. I'm waiting for that day, for when we can do a Q&A and it's person to person and not screen to screen again. Yeah. And guys, thank you so much. I know you guys have been so busy on this sort of, you know, run around doing some press, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us in Jersey today.
Yes, our pleasure. Likewise.
DHA's Reconnect with Rockers is powered by Karis Lock Company, your full-service locksmith.